Welcome to another edition of 15 Minutes of Flame. I'm Robert Phoenix. Sorry we're taking a little bit more time today to get this up and running. I'm working off of the speaker phone app, which I've never done before, in anticipation of going away for a week where I might decide to do a show and use my phone and just kind of explore the potential of using the phone in general so I can do it with a live remote somewhere. Anyway, here we are. What's happening, everybody? Thank you for being here today and being part of this experience that we share. I apologize for not being on the live stream last night. I was not feeling great. I was having some issues with my stomach and some spicy enchiladas that I had eaten that were not sitting real well with me. So unfortunately, we did not get to the astrological experience. But hey, how about that full moon in Capricorn? Wow. It really feels like with the advent of these full moons now, we're getting like just full on essential distilled essence of these moons. I remember it was about a year ago, we were going through a Mars cycle. And maybe this is just me in my chart, but we were going through a Mars cycle about, I think it was last year or the year before. And the Mars cycle was very intense. And I mean, I was really feeling the Mars cycle. This year I'm feeling the moon cycle in kind of a big way. And this Capricorn full moon was no different. Started off moon at 0 degrees Capricorn, opposing my Mars at 0 degrees Cancer, Moon-Mars opposition. Yeah, that's right. Intense. So I hope everybody's gotten through this big full moon, that they got what they needed to get out of it, extract it. It was a big boy moon, big girl moon, pull up your pants kind of moon. And I guess it would be appropriate to talk about the full moon in the context with the G20, because it's really kind of a Capricornian event, is it not? We're the 20 most developed countries of the world, which is the G8 plus, so it's really like, I think, the G12 plus the G8, are there to meet and greet and talk about what they're going to do with the world, what they're going to do with the planet, and how they can work together, apart together, whatever their strategy is. So there are people who were very interested in how Donald Trump's hands would appear throughout G20. There was a lot of intense zooming in on the handshake with Putin. Will they lock into a Freemasonic handshake? I think that was sort of the first hand highlight that people were trying to stare down. Are they going to give it up? Are they going to show that fraternal lock between two hands? No, I don't think they did. I think it was a pretty straight handshake. It was put out there in plain view. However, that said, if you notice, Trump does this triangle thing with his hands all the time. And it's a version of what Angela Merkel does, and it's a version of what Theresa May does. And it's always down, right around his first, second chakra. He's always doing this. And they had a number of pictures from him, or of him, rather, at the G20, flashing his... if you go onto various websites, you'll see various interpretations of it. It's Kabbalistic. It's illuminated. It is the upside-down pyramid, which is bringing the energy from heaven down into the earth. That through the symbolic rendering, that the human becomes a conduit for the energies of the skies, the energies of heaven, the energies of something outside the individual, theoretically. I mean, so Angela Merkel's doing this thing all the time. It's almost like signal porn with her. You almost can't find a picture of Angela Merkel where she's not doing the damn symbol, right? This is what happens. And Trump was in on it all weekend as well. Now, what went down, and this was in Hamburg, so this is on Merkel's territory. I mean, they had the makings of a civil war on the streets of Hamburg, because clearly there are people that are not happy with where the world is going. And I haven't gotten real fractal on who was there. I know Bill de Blasio, the mayor of New York, decided to go and be a part of this protest, which is kind of mind-blowing in some ways. But what are the crowds wanting, hoping, fighting for? Are they in the social Marxist pocket? Are they in the green pocket? Is there that Pisces Vesica where the two of them meet together? Are they anarchists? Are they controlled opposition? Are they agents provocateurs? Are they people who are pissed off at refugees and immigration in Germany? I mean, I'm sure there was this commingling of the human stew, but it was pretty intense. If you've seen some of the pictures and some of the footage, I think there was this is for a German policeman to do this. Things were hot. There was a guy who was shooting warning shots. So by the time the moon had moved into Capricorn, Trump had left, and he put Ivanka in charge. And it's just like another kind of raise your eyebrow moment. It's like, why not put Rex Tillerson in charge? He's the Secretary of State, correct? Why not let Mike Pence sit in? Although if I'm Trump, I'm probably not letting Mike Pence sit in, because I don't want Mike Pence very close to my presidency. So he brings Ivanka in, and nothing like learning on the job. Wow. Interesting stuff. So the G20 went off. Putin and Trump met for a few hours. Now they've decided, apparently, to collaborate and work together in Syria, whatever that means. Now we know that the Syrians and the Russians, they've got ISIS on the run. ISIS is losing this war badly. The Syrian Liberation Army, taking me right back to the 60s with Patty Hearst and St. Hugh. Anyway, they're losing. There are stories of the Syrian Liberation Army throwing down their arms, saying that they want to fight with the Syrian army. They want to change sides, because if they do, they get to stay free. If they don't, they probably wind up in a place a lot worse than the battlefield. At least in the battlefield, you get a choice. So things are happening in Syria. The tide is turning here, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the United States. And of course, all of Trump's generals are just horny. They're horny dogs of war. And I'm sure they were howling at the full moon over Hamburg, pounding the war drums. Now, speaking of war drums, we still have this ongoing, pardon my language, bullshit crisis in North Korea. I mean, it's like anytime you want to wag the dog, anytime you want to distract the American public, let's bring out North Korea. And Kim Jong-un fired off a new ICBM. And it's always 4th of July in North Korea, right? They're just ready. They're just ready to explode some big bottle rockets. Anytime. As long as they get cameras, they're ready to rock and roll. So they fired off an ICBM, which in proximity was somewhat close to Alaska. And the experts have stated that could have hit Alaska, that they can now reach Alaska with one of their ICBMs. Okay. So let's just look at what's been happening in Alaska lately. It's very interesting what's going on there. Obviously, the militarized focus is coming from North Korea, bringing our attention to Alaska. Mark Zuckerberg was there 2 weeks ago, and I think Alaska has, if I'm not mistaken, Alaska has like a state wage that they get from the oil industry. Like everybody gets a certain amount of money each year from the oil industry because of the deals that have been made by the state. The state has cut the populace in. I think they get around $7 to $8 grand per individual per year, if I'm not mistaken. I've got really sharp listeners out there. You can correct me on that. So what he is trying to see, in order to have a living wage, Zuckerberg's universal wage. Excuse me about this sneeze. The money has to come from somewhere. Yes, we're trillions of dollars in debt. And yes, we have people that are theoretically working and that could contribute tax-wise, maybe the upper 0.5%, but that's not going to happen. So in order to have a universal/living wage, what will Zuckerberg have to do? He would likely have to nationalize oil and petroleum. Am I right? Because this is the deal. He went up there and he studied the deal between Alaska and the petroleum companies and how people get paid out. Now, if Zuckerberg could sweeten the deal and make sure that the oil companies not only remain on top, but their position is actually advanced under a universal living wage. I'm not sure how much more advanced it can get, but let's just say there are a few bones he can throw the oil industry. And so the oil industry says, okay, great, we'll do that, and let us drill wherever we want in the United States, off the coast of the United, wherever, just let us drill, because now you're tapping our resources, we can tap the resources back, and yes, you can take 5 to 10% out of our profits each year, and that becomes part of the basket of dollars for the living wage, the universal wage. And I'm sure you could throw in about 5 or 6 other companies or industries, leading companies and leading industries, bring them all together, you've got a basket of universal income. That's how it basically works. And then we would have a complete retrofit of this whole idea of capitalism. This is the Pluto and Capricorn model, where big money and corporations meet big business. And this started right from the jump. This started in October of 2008. Bang. October of 2008, there it was. Just before the election. Pluto goes into Capricorn in late October, early November. We have the election, and we have this massive crisis, which really happens before the election. And it gets all taken care of and solved, white-gloved, and Obama gets to come in, and there's no mess for Obama to clean up. See how they did that? If that had happened after the election, it would have been a disastrous start for Obama. He would have been way out of his league and way over his head. That needed to get solved. Now, after that, he got to parade around and go to places like Solyndra and GM and, oh, look, isn't this wonderful? We've saved America. We've saved these American companies. Anyway, Pluto and Capricorn gets more complex and more advanced as we move forward and begins to cohere around this universal wage idea, concept. And this is really where the government and big business and corporations come together. Now, as long as corporations have enough people to buy their goodies, they probably won't mind too much because they're getting money back, right? Basically, we're going to give you money over here, you're going to come back, you're going to buy our gas, you're going to buy our hardware, you're going to buy our software, you're going to buy our food. So it's being recirculated back into probably the top 10 corporations that would provide sort of this rubric for a living wage. Because, if people aren't having individual jobs, they cannot be taxed. So it's not going to come from the tax base. And clearly it will be something that could really throttle incentive in a lot of ways. Correct? By the way, I'm going to just a little break here. If you get Netflix, I have an amazing documentary to recommend on Netflix. And it has to do with James Arthur Ray. I watched it over the weekend. It is disturbing. It is compelling. It is really a very powerful documentary. Now, what's really interesting about this documentary is it was basically done by CNN. Okay, so we're going to talk about CNN. We're going to bring the CNN equation into today's conversation. Now, let me give you a little bit of backstory. We're going to get back to Alaska because there's more to Alaska. Obama was there right after Mark Zuckerberg. So something's going on. Something big is happening in Alaska. Because you had the kind of the golden boys of the social Marxist New World Order showing up there. By the way, Obama is not wearing his wedding ring anymore. Here's another little bit of hand trivia. Barry Sands' wedding band. You know that marriage was a sham. It was a total fake. Barack Obama is, I think he's a switch hitter, but he bats from the left side a lot of the time. That's my sense. And who knows about Michelle and manly Michelle? Who knows? I mean, there's some very, very strange pictures with some very telling protrusions in her body in certain moments. Let's just put it that way. Anyway, this James Arthur Ray, what's fascinating about this, well, his backstory, of course, is he was this rising star in the self-help, motivational speaking movement. He was right on the cusp of, the big hitters, the heavy hitters, Tony Robbins, Deepak Chopra, Marianne Williamson. These are the heavy hitters of self-help. Eckhart Tolle, and James Ray was right there at the cusp. He had appeared in the movie about The Secret. He spent time on Oprah's couch. He was hanging out there with Michael Beckwith. I mean, he was the next guy. Tall, articulate, slightly unusual looking, but, fairly handsome, charismatic, a little bit of Tony Robbins, a little bit of Stephen Covey, a little bit of Norman Vincent Peale. He was a synthesist. He would bring things together. He got his big start with harmonic money, quantum money, right? And he was talking about how to create money and the mindset you need to create money and all those things. And yes, and the whole thing about all this stuff is these people have to be the living examples of what they're teaching all the time. So in order for the harmonic money thing to work, he's got to embody it. He has to make lots of money. Like, look at me. I'm the embodiment of this. I put my dream into action. I believed in it. I fed my vision. And here, look what I've got. And he basically walked up that pyramid. Kept going higher and higher and higher. And in 2009, this was in October 2009. Of course, there's the tragic incident that happens in Sedona where he has a group of people for his spiritual warrior workshop. He's got this whole pyramid thing set up. You start at the bottom and you take all the different seminars and you get, it's classic. It's a pyramid scheme, literally and figuratively. Although I think, some people probably got something out of connecting with him. So he has this weekend and there are all these things going on inside of his spiritual warrior weekend. And the last thing is he builds this massive sweat lodge and he covers it with plastic. And not a very good idea. Not a very good idea. If you do a sweat lodge, number one, you are playing with heavy duty energy. Heavy energy. If you've never done a sweat lodge, I highly recommend it. You will get in touch with your shit in no time. No time at all. I remember the first sweat lodge I did, it was in Massachusetts, and it was intense. You go in, all these bodies are together. I mean, part of this thing is the claustrophobia. I mean, and I think that's part of it, because it breaks down your ability to feel like you're an island. Okay? And here in the West, we're all about space. I need my space. Give me my space. Space, right? And you get in that sweat lodge, there is no space. You are like a little, I mean, think of like eggs. You're like one of many eggs in a fallopian tube, and you're all kind of stacked together, right? I mean, that's what it feels like. And then they bring the rocks in, the heavy rocks, and it's all dark in there, and you can't move. And then the rocks drop in, and they're glowing. And it's like, oh man. And then the fold flaps, and you're just in utter darkness. You know, you're there with yourself, but you're there with all these other people, and they're like projecting, ejecting, all this stuff inside of this very close-quartered environment. And most sweat lodges I've been in are pretty close-quartered environments. I don't think the idea is to create kind of a, nice luxurious sauna. Although I've had kind of an experience like that a few times in a really cool place up in Mount Shasta. But being in that cramped place is part of the deal. So, but you always use blankets. Never use plastic. And that's what they did because it was so big. How many blankets would they have to get? They'd have to get a ton of blankets. I mean, they had about 60 people in this sweat lodge, row upon row upon row. And they were doing like 5 rounds. Are you kidding me? 5 rounds? 5 rounds? Any sweat lodge I've ever been in, the most was 3. 3. What are you trying to get to at 5? Just a complete like cracking of your psyche, ruining your body. I mean, what is 5 rounds? So 3 people died during this experience. 2 died immediately. 1 died later. And James Arthur Ray stood trial, and he wound up being jailed in prison for 2 years. 2 years. And it's a very fascinating kind of resurrection story in some ways. Like, he comes from a background, his father was a Pentecostal minister, hands-on healing. So it's in his blood. By the way, he's born 11/22. Kind of an interesting birthday, right? 11/22, and he's born in 1957. So James Arthur Ray turned 60 this year. Anyway, so you see his kind of resurrection in some ways. And it goes back in time, and it's a really well-done documentary. Highly recommend it. And you see somebody who has come from this place of being right near the apex and then just completely crashes and begins to build himself back together again. And now he's speaking to 5,000-10,000 people. He's doing keynotes, and he uses this experience that he's had to kind of further his teachings. Look, this is life, and in some cases, it is also death. And I don't necessarily begrudge James Arthur Ray his life path. What else is he going to do? This is who he is. This is what he does, for better or worse. Is he going to go back to AT&T, which is where he started, and telemarket? I don't think so. He's got his own version. Anyway, what's fascinating about the documentary, which I highly recommend, is that it's done by CNN. And I didn't find this out. I had to go online and do a little bit of background on him in the documentary. And by the way, that wasn't the first time some very strange stuff happened in his seminars. He did this one seminar in San Diego where he had people dress up as homeless people. Like, in some ways I get that, right? So the people at the seminar, you're going to dress up as homeless, and you're going to go out in the streets, and you're going to feel what it's like to not have money or to be a homeless. I mean, I kind of get that. I mean, it's, that falls in the camp of crazy wisdom. That's something that Rinpoche, Trungpa Rinpoche would do. Crazy wisdom. But during that San Diego seminar, one of the women who was part of it wound up falling from like an 18-foot, an 18-story building. Fell to her death. How does that happen? How does she? Did she commit suicide? I mean, really, is that what happened? Did she feel so impoverished and so traumatized by dressing up as homeless that she checked out? I mean, it's really, so he continued to do his thing. But what's fascinating, again, I did some research on it, is that he did an interview with Piers Morgan. And after the interview, Piers Morgan's manager and publicist, it was like 2 or 3 days after the interview, announces that he's taking on James Arthur Ray as a client. How about that? So you have to wonder what's really going on with the CNN interview or the CNN documentary. Is it part of a gritty sort of expose on self-help and human potential? Is it a unflinching look at the rise and fall of James Arthur Ray, or is it a promotional tool? That's really the big question here, right? I think it's probably all of that. It's a fascinating documentary, and I highly recommend it. Now, again, from the CNN perspective, the great creator of fake news. People are so onto fake news now. And look, I think they all should be held under the solar glare of what's real and what's not real. It's not just CNN. Let's be honest about that. It's not just CNN. You can throw Fox in there. You can throw MSNBC in there. Even your local TV stations create something that theoretically passes for news. You might get one little savory bite in your evening news that you might watch along with your dinner. I'm not sure anybody does that anymore. We used to do that when I was a kid. But mostly it's pablum, and in many cases it's kind of manufactured, or they they choose stories that help manufacture reality. Now, I found a meme, and it was a meme where a young girl was repurposed 3 different times in the Middle East. She's got 2 of the pictures, she's got the same pajamas on. One picture, she's wearing different pajamas, you can tell it's the same girl. I posted that meme on my Facebook page, and I've gotten close to 6,000 shares with that meme. 6,000 shares. Mind-blowing. Absolutely mind-blowing. 6,000 shares. Along with it, I've had quite a few interesting friend requests, let's put it that way. But 6,000 shares. So what does that mean? It means that people are hungry. People are hungry for the truth. And we're living in a time where, it is going to happen. It's going to come out. It will fester like a boil. But it's going to happen. Because people are hungry for it. We talk about the Matrix. We talk about a organic reality or synthetic reality. And I love these guys down in New Orleans, Battle Nola Radio. I can't stress how important in some ways their radio show is. And I hear it once a week. They throw about anywhere between 70 to 90 minutes up on YouTube. And sometimes they have really well-known guests like Jim Fetzer, James Perloff, sort of the usual suspects. And then they have, at times, lesser-known people. But this guy, Nathan Lawrenson, who is the guy who runs the show, he's a really interesting character. And he's like dialed in. He's totally dialed in. So they were talking about synthetic versus analog reality. And they were going through this is nothing new for people who listen to the show, but they were going through all the different wars and how they were started. Synthetic. There's like no analog event. And what we mean by that is that there's something that's created, something that's false, something that forces us by grabbing our attention, hijacking our signal, and essentially vomit launching us into a war. I don't think it can happen now. I get this sense that people are not willing to engage in a big, large-scale war effort. And astrologically, we're going to see that with Chiron and Aries. We're going to see resistance. We're going to see wounded warriors, and we're going to see war-weary people. You know, I read a statistic where we've been since we became a country, there are only 22 years that we have not been at war. Think about that. 22 years where we have not been at war. And some of that actually happened to some extent during the Reagan era. What were we involved in with Reagan? What was it? That wasn't the Falklands. It was that other crazy, weird little war. We weren't involved in any real war during the Reagan era. If you look at the Carter administration, we get the wind down from Vietnam, and that basically, goes through, start with Ford. We get the wind down from Vietnam with Ford. Ford actually presides over this period where we're really not in any major conflict. Now, there's some other things going on. There are things brewing in Angola. We're starting to see the beginning of the Iran-Contra, but it's not a big-time, full-scale war. The Iran-Contra stuff explodes under Reagan. So Reagan gets some of that. But there's only been 22 years where we have not been at war. And I think people are tired of it. I think people are absolutely sick of it. The problem is that the economy with the military-industrial complex is so tied to war. If you take away Northrop Grumman, you take away Raytheon, you take away Lockheed, you take away some of the companies that create munitions, there are jobs that will go away. There is an entire economic infrastructure that has been created for war and the support of war. Look at what happened. If you want to look at a small-scale slice of it, look what happened in Iraq with the quote-unquote Gulf War, Gulf War II. You saw everything happen very quickly. You saw infrastructure being built very quickly. You saw weapons being deployed, troops being deployed. I mean, it all happened. It's like a mushroom. This is what the military-industrial complex brings. Computer systems, you name it. And, this is where huge amounts of money, it's a great business if you can be in it, right? Because what are you getting? You're getting contracts from the government. You're getting tax dollars. And if you're got sweetheart deals going on, you can work arms sales through the government. And now you've got not just this government, but foreign clients. Like what we saw with Jared Kushner in Saudi Arabia. We got on the phone and said, hey, Lucky, can you give them a 15% discount? Oh, yeah, no problem. Close that deal. But I think we're tired of war, and I think at some point there's going to be, because, how many vets have to come back? And there's this level of saturation that takes place. Oversaturation. And, I know somebody who knows somebody. This is what happens. I know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody. And the next thing you know, you've got a bunch of people who have witnessed the ravages of what war can do to an individual and their family. And it's not pretty. It is absolutely not pretty. And we live in a traumatized and triggered world anyway. And you're doubling down with war. It's awful. So at some point, people will not have the stomach for war. Now, is that a good thing or a bad thing? I would say it's probably a good thing. It's a bad thing if the United States is attacked, in which case it's a whole nother equation, right? But I think it's time that we revisited this whole notion of war and feeding the beast. I'd hope that some of this would have come out with Jupiter and Libra, but the only thing that's really come out with Jupiter and Libra is how distended imbalance is in our society. The masculine, the feminine, the haves, the have-nots, the black and the white issue. Everything that's on those two scales has not been balanced. It's just the imbalance has been expanded. or the perceived imbalance at times. Let's put it that way. I was going to get into this thing around the New York Times, and it was from the Sunday op-ed columnist, why does Donald Trump keep dissing Jews? So they're trying to make Trump into an anti-Semite, which is completely ironic based on everybody he's hired in his cabinet. So it's really the Goldman Sachs presidency. His son-in-law, his daughter, his sons are both married into Jewish families. There's a strong indication that Trump himself might even be Jewish. So I don't really get this. It's another arrow headed in Trump's direction, as if he could use a few more, right? Anyway, we got through this weekend. We got through this Moon in Capricorn intense weekend. And I just want to thank everybody who has supported this show and shared their enthusiasm and shared their little nuggets or tidbits of leads or stories they want me to follow up on. I really appreciate it. Please, keep them coming. This is a two-way operation. It's not just me broadcasting. It's you receiving and broadcasting back to me. And I'm always open to your comments and your ideas and your tips to make the show better. So thank you for all that. I got some nice emails over the weekend. And that's about it. Clocking in here at a crisp 37 minutes today. So if you're somewhere in the western part of the United States, or you're just waking up and it's 7:52, I hope you've enjoyed this podcast, over your coffee, your cereal, your bagel, your smoothie, whatever it is that you have chosen to eat and take in at the beginning of the day along with me. I really appreciate it. And let's just all make a promise. Let's make a solemn promise here, or perhaps not such a solemn promise, that we're all going to move forward together, that we're going to keep our positive frame of mind, that we're going to support the people that need support. We're going to be doing our best to stay in the love and the light of truth and allow for something organic, something analog to emerge during a potentially dark and synthetic time. So let's hold the line, as they say. And just want to tell you all that I love you and I respect you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for listening in. This is Robert Phoenix, and you've listened to 15 Minutes of Flame. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to say what's possible. I'll be back 24 hours from today. Give me some feedback as I've used this app on the phone. I'd love to get some feedback from you. How does it sound? How did it come across? And look forward to filing that into the sort of the general knowledge base here. All right. How about a little applause? This one's for you. Applause for you.